call this meeting to order, please. Thank you all for coming. Would you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Everybody's here. Pauline. Madam Superintendent, any adjustments to the agenda?
We have a hire here. I think she's in the audience. So came in, or a new guidance person. I believe that's it.
I think that's in
It's part of the agenda.
Oh, it's on the agenda.
I think it is in the agenda. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of August 21st.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? I had someone, I read those minutes, I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought in the whole listing of all of the warrants that were done, that some of those warrants were done by Kristen and Joe. And they all come under Janet and mine.
So you want me to break them up? I just did which ones were completed under that.
Okay. Did you list names at all?
I
No,
can,
it says that I reported that the following warrants
Yeah.
have been completed.
Well,
I
if you
didn't
just
provide-
remove the names, then you could just say the following warrants were completed. And then that would take care of it.
okay.
Okay? Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? With the one correction?
I'm abstaining.
Okay. Passes 4, 1 abstention. Always have trouble with that. Personnel, I'll entertain a motion to approve the nomination of Lisa Marie Johnson as WHS Guidance Counselor.
So moved.
Second.
Is there introduction or discussion?
I would be delighted to introduce her, pop up and say hello. Hello. She is going to start with us next Monday, I think.
I believe so.
That's really sad. So lots of experience in high schools as well as in institutions, and we are real happy with that.
One less hat.
Yeah, Mr. Campbell is extremely ecstatic, yes. Before you can be too ecstatic, any further discussion? Okay, not there yet. All right, so Mr. Petrowski.
Ms. Johnson, I see that, is it true that you are a rhetoric major?
Yes, I was.
Were you a debater?
No.
Okay. I was just trying to get a debate team.
That's because Mr. Petrowski used to be our debate coach. WHS, a very successful one. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Welcome. And many successes with your professional career with us and with our children. Thank you very much. Very excited to be here. Excellent. We can't wait for you to start. Superintendent report, please.
Thank you very much. The first item is the finance report. We're roughly 83% through the year now, and we have rolled the budget that was approved by the voters August 13th into the 2019-20 operating budget. And believe it or not, we're starting to think about putting together the next budget, which will be 2021. One of the things that we do, and the we in that sentence is Ida and Amanda and Colleen and I, is we go through in what I call the exchange of staff. And so we look at all the people who left and all of the people who were hired, and then we're looking for any kind of a positive or negative difference in between those two numbers. So we're going through that exercise now. Some of the lines that you'll see are supplies. For example, our Article 1 grade school supplies are flat, right, Jeff? So no more spending at the grade school as we go through in supplies. So as we go throughout the year, you will see that percentages are going to vary because some of the things that we pay up front, things such as computer leases, one payment gets paid now. Supplies get bought over the summer, so those lines will look a little flat. But as you review the different percentages in terms of where we are in the year, we're right about at 83% or so. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that.
The only concern I had when I was reviewing that was the maintenance. And last year we we had trouble maintaining that maintenance line. And it seems like we're sort of starting off behind again. Is that because we bought a lot of supplies ahead of time? Or is it because we're really in that better shape maintenance-wise? Or yes to both?
Well, I think the answer is yes to both. For example, I wasn't expecting to have a maintenance issue at the front door of the high school that was almost $2,000. But it's a security issue and we need to have it fixed. We need to have it fixed right away. We have buildings that are older. I think many people think of the high school as new. It's not. It's 17 years old. The roof is 17 years old. And things are going to start to go. And in perfect candor, I don't know if things have been as well maintained as they might have been. And so they get pretty expensive to fix, and they completely go.
For sure, maintenance has been deferred over the years for financial reasons. And that will catch up with us. Thank you.
You're welcome. So also in your packet is the enrollment report. We opened with 875 kids, and I don't put a tremendous amount of stock in that number only because the official count, as the school committee knows, was October 1st. And that's the number that we use to report to the state. That's our official count for budgeting purposes. I will ask the administrators to have already for their student-teacher counts, their enrollments. That'll begin when I talk about part of the budget process. That's the first thing that kicks that off, is I want to know how many kids are in classrooms, what those class sizes are, and what our programs look like. So that's the beginning of the enrollment. Technology, I believe I let the school committee know that we have retained Sierra Communications to their vendor to assist us with our technology needs. The administrators and I had a very productive discussion on Tuesday regarding long-term and short-term technology needs, and it was a pretty robust view on whether we want to stay with the model that we have or we want to look at something different. And right now we are in the process of examining what those possibilities might look like and hopefully come back to the school committee with a recommendation in October. And then, let's see, so that's technology opening of school I thought was awesome. I know you want to touch on that in your remarks, so I won't say too much. I want to say thank you to Mrs. Chris and Amanda, who were some of my partners in crime as we pulled off, I think, a complete surprise. I heard accolades for the commissioner. That was a huge deal to have her come and speak in Winthrop, and she was very well received by the staff. The administrators and I talked about moving one of the professional development days to the beginning of the year as opposed to having it in November. That seems to have worked well. People really like having the extra time. And the first day for new staff, which was that Friday, we want to take a look at and see how that goes forward in the 2021 school year. And then last, my goals. The school committee provided me with suggestions and different areas to work on for the 1920 school year. And I appreciate the chairperson taking those goals and categorizing them for me. And I believe they captured, we did that together, pretty much everything that had been suggested. And so in three broad strokes, the first one is to ensure resources are aligned to support students and improve the long and short-term financial health of the school district. And there are a number of activities listed to attract and retain the highest quality staff. And again, activities listed there. And the third one, to lead, inspire, and set the tone for the Winthrop School District. And then the last one, which is number 4, which is really always a goal of mine, is to maintain myself, my physical and spiritual health. So that's that. Be happy to entertain questions or comments about those. It should reflect pretty much what people I get asked to do.
I just want the rest of the school committee to realize that, you know, the list that we developed and was around a couple of weeks ago, we all conceded ought to be shortened to 3 to 5 goals. And what Dr. Brown has done here is created large categories and put in just about every single one of those goals. So none of them have really been eliminated. And she knows I have a concern about that, her ability to be able to do all of them and still maintain number 4. So that's a concern. So, but she says she can do it.
Can I just add one thing, because I know there are some things that are going to happen between now and when the school committee meets again, and this is under the heading of number 1. The school committee is aware that we have an A&E, Architectural and Engineering, request for qualifications out. At the August 21st meeting, Chairman Geyer nominated and had Jim as a member of that committee. We have 5 people who are going to meet. We received 4 proposals. 2 of the firms I'm very familiar with, 2 I am not. The committee will have an organizational meeting, I hope the 11th, Colleen, and that is to give each of those members the packet of proposals. We'll go over the rubrics that we'll need to use to score them. We'll talk about the process, and then we will set up interview dates for each of those firms. I'm still hoping that we are on track to have a nomination before you October 1st to retain a firm. And then we will enter into negotiations with that firm and hopefully get them started on that evaluation of the work. One of the things we've talked about is the scope, and as drafted, that request for qualifications included all of the buildings, all of the fields, all the parking, and so on. And if we select a firm and we need to do what's called value engineering, which means basically to pare back the scope of work, we'll have to look at things that have already been done. For example, the traffic study that was done here at the grade school is relatively recent, and I don't think that work needs to be done again. So I just want, for the public and for the school committee, that's where we are, because a lot will take place between now and when you meet formally as a board again to elect or to actually award that contract. Be happy to answer any questions if people have them.
And you're okay with the 11th?
Yes, I have a staff meeting till 3:15, but I said, I should be able, as long as we get out at 3:15, I'll be there.
Okay. Good. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you. Can I just ask how the new grade school dropout process is working?
Mr. Ladd's the best person to talk to that.
Mr. Ladd, how did that new drop-off work?
Can I cover it when we do some of the other stuff, or you want me to do it now?
Sure. Were you going to cover it with your security and safety thing? Okay. Thank you. School chair report. October 24 and 25 is the MSMA conference. Does everybody have it on their calendar? Janet, you going to take time off from school? No, probably not.
And that's a no for me.
That's a no?
Well, I think I'll be under contract.
I'm able to go.
Okay.
Sun out? Is it warm that day? I'm taking up golf game.
It'd be snowing that, Joe.
Okay. I do want to, well, I'll zip on down to number 4. We need a delegate to the assembly for the MSBA conference. Last year, Joe did that, and I was the alternate. We need to elect a delegate and an alternate. So let's try to do that right now if we could. Would anyone like to nominate anyone?
I move to nominate Joe Trustee as our delegate to the Assembly for the MSBA conference.
I second.
Do you accept that nomination?
I do, because I've now been trained, probably 9 out of the last 11 years.
Think you've got it down
I
pat?
think I got it down pat, I even know where the room is.
Okay. As long as they don't change it, thank you. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Joe, for being our delegate. We need an alternate. Someone probably should.
I move to nominate Jimmy Geyer as the alternate delegate to the Assembly for the MSBA conference.
Second.
Would anyone else like to do it?
I'm not available at that time in the afternoon.
Yeah, okay. Okay. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0. I do want to just say, what a great opening. I've probably been to about 45 openings now, and I don't want to demean any of the other 44, but this year's first day for all of the staff was one of the most outstanding things I've seen, and I want to thank everyone for participating, including our very own Kristen Shumway. I don't think you can better that dance. And the message that the commissioner had for all of us was really uplifting. And I think all of the staff has received a link to a website, so that if you do have those good educational ideas that might help other students around the state, please take advantage of that link, as you were invited to do by the commissioner. As you all know, we're going to try to revise the mission statement on the 18th of September. So be ready for that. And I just this afternoon sent out to all of you in your email the goals that we had for 18-19, the school committee goals for 18-19. It's time for those to be evaluated. How well did we do with those? We'll be doing that in one of the meetings in October, as well as coming up with 19-20 school committee goals. So please be ready for those things. I did send the goals to you in an email this afternoon, the old goals. I think we're going to go into standing committee reports, please. Finance committee. I don't think we did any. Yeah, I think that there is no finance committee. Policy, Mrs. Cook.
We met and we'll be discussing some things.
In a few minutes. Negotiations, Ms. Shumway.
We have a meeting, I don't think since we last met as a committee that we've had meetings.
Okay.
I don't feel like we have. But the committee met last week, and both groups that were negotiating, the administrative unit and the support staff unit, we're meeting with them on September 10th. That's our next meeting.
Oh, good. Good, thank you. Mr. Ladd, Alice presentation? I think you're on.
We want to do open forum first, or?
Did I forget that again?
I don't know.
I even wrote your name right down here, Mr. Ladd, right next to the administrative forum. Okay, I'm very sorry again. Administrative open forum. Who wants to start? Mr. Ladd.
Since I'm in the doghouse, I'll start, right? We had our open house for grades K through 5 just a little over a week ago. And that was very well attended, and we had great weather for the first time that I can remember in a long time. We weren't running fans and trying to stay cool. The weather has been a big blessing. School opened for grades 1 to 5 just a week ago today, and everything went very smoothly. Preschool open house was held last Thursday. We have 3 preschool classrooms, and they each have an open house that parents come and visit and meet the teacher and do a few activities. Preschool and K students arrived this week, and that always brings lots of new challenges. We can handle grades 1 through 5, which is about 350 kids pretty easily, but you bring in 100 K and preschool kids, and all of a sudden everything that was planned is kind of getting wonky. So we'll be the next few weeks getting that all settled in, but it's going well. And 5th grade band instrument demonstrations took place this morning, trying to entice our 5th graders into joining the new band.
Thank you. Who's up?
Thank you, Soto. Middle school athletics started this week, so that just started out yesterday and today. Our first Cowboy game for football, soccer, and golf will be this Friday, and girls soccer and boys soccer will be next week. On Tuesday and Wednesday respectively. Hoping to hire some new people for our co-curricular clubs. We had a big turnover this year, so as I'm sure you saw in the emails. We're looking for some people and applied for a grant through Chevy, and we received that last week. So,
Congratulations, what's that for?
facility, I'm gonna, down here in Maxwell Field, facility upgrades and maintenance, so poison ivy, crabgrass, stuff like that, so.
Who's that?
Just numbers. We currently have 105 special education students. We had 8 new kindergarten students transfer in from CDS. We have 8 new move-ins, and we had 7 move-outs. So relatively low numbers, getting everybody's files in and sending them out and sorting it all out, but good start.
Thank you. Who's up?
Beauty before the beast.
Let's see, great opening day, if I do say so myself.
And you do.
We've got plans to do more with that at the middle school. Yes, we do. Nancy.
The first, oh, that day, that was great. Yeah. The first day of school.
Our first day of school, our first day was awesome, smooth as butter on a biscuit, warm biscuit. Open house is tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, please come. Putting on my technology hat tomorrow night because parents do get the opportunity to come and sit and meet with me, technology, so that they can take their laptops. 7th and 8th graders will be able to take their laptops home beginning next week if we can get them all started. Not there yet, but we're working on it. So open house tomorrow night at 6. I'll be very, very busy with technology. And athletics began this week, and I'm really excited. I got a lot of kids involved. A lot of 6th graders are really, really excited. So that's it from the middle school.
Thank you.
Because that leaves the high school.
Yes, it does.
And our opening went extremely well too. It was a great day. We actually began the night before with our freshman orientation program. It was very well attended. The student council with Ms. Doucette leading the way entertained the students, provided some opportunity for the students to ask questions of high school students and tour the building. So I think it was a great evening for those kids because the next day they were in with everybody else. So made it a little less anxiety for the kids. Mr. Stolten and I worked the first couple of days with a lot of students to shore up their schedules. At this point, I think we have the majority of the student schedules working well for them. There'll still be those minor changes that need to be made based upon students finding out they signed up for the wrong class. And lastly, our open house is next Tuesday, September 10th, and we will be running it from 6 p.m. to 7:45. Thank you.
Thank you. Did Mr. Lyle leave?
It's right there.
Okay, ready to go. Now, I'd like to introduce Mr. Lyle, who's going to give us an update on the security-related summer projects. And you are representing the Alice team, yes?
I'm going to do some of that.
All right.
So here's the team. There were 9 people from Winthrop that went to Bangor last August. I don't remember the date, but it was early August. And we had 7 staff members and 2 Winthrop police officers that joined us for those 2 days for Alice training. And everybody but 2 are here. If you guys could just stand up so they can see the training team. We're missing Todd Park and Christiana Slocum from first grade at the grade school. So I'm going to run through a little bit of information. You guys can sit down if you want to. You'll have a chance to jump in later. I'm just going to run through some quick information, and then you can ask any questions, and they can answer all the questions that you have. So,
you want to kill the center lights or not?
I don't care if people need to see. So we have signed up for the Alice e-learning and all of the resources that are available. We have a 3-year license to move the program forward for all employees in the district. We have 200 licenses. which is going to be pretty close in terms of the number that I think we need. We may have to up it, but we will see. So here you can just see that we completed 2 courses. There's an instructor certification and an introduction that we had to do, and we get a little certificate. So the training team, 9 members are now certified, and we can do all the training in the district for anyone that is employed here. Our 2 police officers can actually train outside of the organization because they are law enforcement officers. But for those of us that are school employees, we can only train here in the school and the immediate staff that are here. We can include town office, we can include daycare, bus personnel, etc. But people that are associated with our organization. So they send us resources, and there's an instructor packet of information we can do, and then there's some curriculum materials, K-12. And if we just look at the K-12 real quick, there are student curriculums. You can see it's broken out into all the different levels, so that material's there. Will be easy to access when we're ready to do that training with students. There's also special considerations that you can work with special ed folks and other people that might need a different level of training. So I'm going to go to instructor. And I'm going to hopefully, if this works, I'm going to take you through this introduction to Alice presentation. It worked before, so. There we go. So Alice is a proactive, options-based plan for civilian response to a violent critical incident. Alice authorizes and empowers individuals to utilize human action, building infrastructure, and communication options to increase their chances of survival. The whole point of the program is to increase survivability for those people that might be caught in a violent critical incident. So when the model first started, it was an instructor-led model, and they found that there were very many problems with trying to keep consistency in the model, making sure everybody was trained the same, trying to get to everybody. So they've moved to a different model, which they call a blended learning model. So there are e-learning components. So there are, just like we had to as instructors, we weren't allowed to take the course unless we completed the e-learning module first. So they did all that background information with us so that when we got into the classroom, they could start right in with us and start throwing us around. But it wasn't quite that bad, but he did start the class quite intensely with a long list of facts and figures from shootings that really get your attention. So there's the e-learning portion, and then there's the instructor-led portion where there's actually the trainers here at our school will be doing that piece of it with drills and other types of activities to support that e-learning module. Skipping that. Violent critical incident. Any event at any location where a person or persons attempts to harm innocent people by any means and regardless of motivation. A lot of times people have talked about active shooter training and active shooter this and active shooter that. Active shooters are included in this, but when you use the terminology active shooter, it leaves other things out, like knives, bombs, cars, other things. So they use a more generic or a little more open definition, and that's what we are trained to talk about and think about are violent critical incidents as opposed to active shooter. Survival is always based on 2 outcomes. The event is taken back under control and or people remove themselves from the dangerous area. So those are 2 of the guiding principles. Can you skip that? Training, the Alice training is a proactive approach. It provides additional options beyond the traditional lockdown. It doesn't abandon lockdown, but it adds to that basic piece that people are used to doing. It assumes that every event is not the same. Alice is not sequential, so it's not a sequential steps. You try this, it doesn't work, you go to the next one. You look at each situation and you use the skills from Alice to assess the situation and determine the best way to survive for you and anyone that's with you. It's research-based. So the A for Alice, it is an acronym. A is alert. That's initial awareness. So that could be a message that comes over the intercom that a perpetrator has entered in the front lobby and is headed towards the library and he's carrying whatever for a weapon. So it could be that type of an alert. It could be a phone call from somebody next door. It could be somebody running down the hall. It could be anything in terms of beginning to get that first information out there that there's something going on. There are no code words. Everything is real-time information and accurate descriptions of what you're seeing and hearing, because that guides other people in making their decisions on what they're going to do to react to that. Lockdown. Lockdown, they refer to it as an enhanced lockdown. Our old lockdown, you'd get in, you'd lock the door, close the window, and then you'd hide in the corner and hope for the best. We're not going to be doing that anymore. We'll be moving to an enhanced lockdown once we complete the training. We want to spread the kids out, spread everyone out. We want to begin to think about what would we do if somebody were to get through that door that's locked, whether they shoot it out, break it down, whatever. If they get through, how am I going to respond to that? Look for a secondary exit. Maybe there's a window you can climb out if you're not higher than a second story. First aid supplies, dial 911. We used to get excited about taking cell phones away from kids for our lockdowns. That will no longer be the case as we move forward. Those are valuable communication tools to the outside world. This is just some information that, even if you have glass, it's obviously not a barrier. Very few places have bulletproof glass or glass that you can't get through. Those are just some examples of some of the school shootings where people went through the glass. I is inform. Inform is the ongoing communication during the event. So people will be trained to be able to get onto the intercom and potentially broadcast information. If they see something in one end of the building, they can identify what is happening and where it is happening, so that the other end of the building may choose that this is a great time for us to evacuate, because I know where they are. So it's going to be that informed piece of giving that information out. There are also new technologies that people can put on their cell phones, and I know Somerset County is working with their sheriff, and they're doing I think all the schools in Somerset County with a campus alert or something, which has been common on the college settings. I talked to Ryan just the other day, and he was going to talk to Kennebec County to see if they maybe didn't want to get shown up by Somerset, but said he'd look into that. Counter. Counter is not really fighting. Some people get excited and say, well, we're going to train everyone to fight. Counter is not fighting. Counter is looking at things that we can do that are going to interrupt what's happening. So if you have somebody, particularly in a weapon situation, and they're trying to use a gun, those things they have to be able to do to have any accuracy in their shooting. Target acquisition, sight picture, sight alignment, trigger control, stance, grip, breathing. Those things have to all be in place for accurate shooting. If you get only 2 or 3 of those, you've increased your chances of survivability. So you want to try to interrupt those things. So we talked about something called an OODA loop. You'll see in the top left bluish gray box there, ODA. And that's called the OODA loop. So whenever you engage in something, the human brain goes through something called the OODA loop. And the first thing you do is you observe, then you orient, then you decide, and then you act. So they've applied that to a shooting situation. Target acquisition is your observe, orient, stance, grip, breathing, decide is your sight picture, and act is squeezing the trigger. So if you're going to interrupt any piece of that OODA loop, the brain automatically has to go back to the beginning again. It doesn't pick up where it left off. So if you can interrupt with distraction, whether it's running around, whether it's throwing something, when you're throwing something, you're not necessarily trying to hurt the person. You're trying to break that OODA loop. You're trying to interrupt their thought pattern on what they're trying to do, and that surprise factor, and that's going to increase survivability because their ability to shoot accurately is going to go down. If you just sit there and wait for them, you're giving them all those things in place, and they can do what they want to do. So the OODA loop is an important piece of what we talked about. And E is evacuate. Evacuate is a preferred response, which is a little bit different than the way we've done things in the past, but people will be encouraged to evacuate whenever it's safe to do it. And evacuation will not be on a central command from the office. People will be trained to make that decision based on the ALICE training to decide when it is safe for them to evacuate and get their kids out of that situation. So, we don't have any kids here. I'm contemplating playing a little bit of the Columbine 911 call. It's 5 minutes long, but it really hits the point home of why we need to be able to evacuate. When you listen to 20 years ago, this was old thinking at that point. However, we're just getting to the point 20 years later where we're starting to get new thinking. So if there's nothing that's bloody or squeamish or anything, it's just the concept of listening to what's going on and what the advice was being given at the time. And if anybody wants to leave or thinks they need to leave, go ahead. Or somebody wants to break my OODA loop, I'll stop it. So there were, you can see on the side there, lessons learned. There were many, but the primary one has been missed. There was plenty of time and opportunity to get out. In a lot of those situations, there actually were doorways, and they could have just walked out doorways and gotten out of situations. But because people didn't have permission at that point in time to look out for their own safety and take that opportunity to evacuate, they didn't do it. You also heard a lot of people sort of denying what it was they were seeing and hearing. They would make up, well, maybe it's a theater production. Maybe it's, it's interesting that people try to rationalize what's going on around them and make sense out of it, as opposed to being trained and just going into action to barricade doors, to lock things, to escape. So that is the reason why the ALICE is here. And the other big thing from Columbine is the police learned their lesson very quickly. The police were all outside at this point in time when all this was going on waiting. And no longer is that the case. Police go in immediately. They learned their lesson quickly. They changed their protocols immediately, and they went in to any type of situation at this point in time. First person on the scene goes in. Real quickly, last two things. These are some of the research and guideline mandates. You'll see FEMA reports, state and federal recommendations, and they all support the practices that ALICE promotes. And lastly, we will be moving forward with training for our staff. We'll be doing the blended learning. The first part will be an online unit that they will, we can sign them, all the staff up with an email. We can push that out to them when they complete the course. It's checked off. We know it's been checked off, and once they've completed that, then we can move into the exercises and scenarios. We will be able to be an ALICE certified school district as soon as we've completed 75% of our employees are trained. That we have completed a certain number of the actual hands-on drills, and that we have a board policy that supports those things. As soon as that happens, then we become a certified organization. And ALICE trainers work with us to get us to that point. I talked to her yesterday, and she said, I'm going to be bugging you because we're going to hit that 75% goal. So I said, that's up to my team. So they're going to do all the work. And that is all I have. If anyone has questions for anyone on the team, I'll let them speak now.
Anybody has any questions?
I don't really have a question, more of a comment that might turn into a question. Thank you for bringing this to the district, for the dedication of all of you, for taking the training and committing to having our district be certified. It's very scary, but it's our world these days. Sorry, it's very hard to watch. When parents, when the teaching and the training goes into the classroom, how, is there like a suggestion on how you deal with pushback from parents who don't want their students to be terrified of these sorts of things happening in schools?
There are some resources that are available in their training packets to help us roll that out to the next level. Our first task will be training staff. And so we won't be doing much of anything with students at this point in time. We have to get the staff up to speed, and then we'll start talking about how we're going to roll this out to the students and the parents.
So do you anticipate this school year will be spent training, or the first half of the school year, or 2 years? I mean, what's the timeline? Do you have a sense?
We're hoping for 2 early release days in November and December to do training with staff. None of us, we've trained each other and we've participated in the training, so we have a guess on how it's going to go, but we haven't actually done it yet, so we're learning as we go. But I would hope that we would get all of our staff trained this year and at least have developed a plan on moving it forward to parents and students.
Thank you.
Any thoughts about when we might receive that policy?
No, not yet. I have a sample, but I just got it yesterday, so I haven't really looked at it yet.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, that's one thing that we can do to help.
Yep.
Any other questions? That was just excellent.
I want to thank everybody that went to the training. When I signed up for it last April, it's like, oh my goodness, I don't know. I hope there's other people that want to do this. So I was thrilled. Dr. Brown found money, and Ryan was supportive and sent his 2 officers. So we have a great team, and so I'm actually going to make them do all the training. I'm just organizing it.
Thank you, people, for moving this forward. We really appreciate that as a school system. It's incredibly important to all of us. Yes.
Can I add something for what Kristen asked about the kids being terrified, which is a real thing, especially with the younger kids. Personally, I mean, it's a terrifying topic. There's no way around that. When we tell them the traditional lockdown, that's still terrifying. But the knowledge that I got, and I think we'll be able to give to the kids, is empowering. And I think it was for all of us. Knowing what to do changes that level of fear. Not that they're ever going to listen to a 911 call and not be terrified like we all are right now, but that they know what to do. They feel they can be a proactive part of them surviving, and that, I think, helped me, certainly.
Thank you. Any other? Yes, Ms. Shaw.
One thing that they have for the younger kids is they have a book called I'm Not Scared, I'm Prepared, and it's very well done. We saw samples of that at it, and I think we have it for the grade school. That does a very good job. It's put out by a woman who does a lot of these hard topics for young kids type of books, and it's really well done. It really helps kids understand what they're doing to be prepared.
Thank you.
All set? We'll move on. Mrs. Cook.
Security related summer program.
Oh, I thought we were doing all that.
It comes more to it.
Okay. And who's doing that?
He's the principal.
Okay. Mr. Ladd, would you like to start us off? Or did you want a break?
No, I'll get it done, no
And
more.
then you do all the
And I'll be all done.
presentation, yeah.
So we made,
Thank you, folks.
yes, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We made major changes at the grade school this year. I've wanted to do it for several years, but didn't feel like I had all of the resources and support to be able to do that. So at this point, we've implemented a lot of changes with your support, the superintendent's support. The threat and vulnerability assessment was a major push forward for us to be able to do that. So some of the significant changes are the drop-off out front. No longer is anyone dropped off out back, so they are using the spaces along Highland Avenue. We've had police presence since day one. The first day, I think we had 3 officers there, and then we decided we really didn't need 3 officers, so we've had 2 since then. And Ryan said we'll probably go down to 1 pretty quickly here, probably by next week. The parents have done an amazing job with following that, and they've figured out ways to get their kids to school and take the picture and drop them off and get in the car and get out of there. We haven't had many backups. It's gone far better than I ever imagined. I should have been more optimistic, but I was prepared, so.
It's nice to be surprised.
It is, it's a nice way to be surprised. Even once we get out, we knew this week was gonna be even more challenge with the kindergarten and preschoolers. That is more of a challenge. They're smaller, they're younger, they require closer supervision. Parents are less likely to wanna let them go, but we did fine. It really went well. The other major change is parents don't walk their kids to class anymore. Generally speaking, they don't even go in the front door. We've had a few that have gone in the front door and separated, not a problem. Most of them are going with the program, they're separating outside, and the kids are walking in with staff or siblings. We had 1 person that refused to follow the rules on the first day, but he did the second day on, so we'll take it. But even that has gone very well. I can't say parents are excited about it or glad that we've done it. However, they understand the need to do it. And it's really more of almost a sadness that we've come to this point. I know at the open house, several people said, I'm not going to see you tomorrow. You know, and it was like, because we're used to greeting each other and you get to know parents. So it's kind of that just sadness of the reality of the situation we're in. But those are the 2 major changes that we've made at the grade school. And like I said, they're both going extremely well. Staff has done a great job. Staff has been ready to do this again for a while. So everybody just jumped right on board and have been doing their part. The other thing I just wanted to mention real quickly, when we did the threat and vulnerability assessment, in the back of that study, there's an appendix, the school security measures, and it's a group of 64 things that enhance school security. And so I've used this as my guideline when I rewrote the staff handbook, when we set up procedures for this year. Most of these are not things that cost money. They're procedural changes, they're thinking changes, their communication changes. And I'm not going to say we've completely addressed all of them, but there are at least 35 out of the 64 that we're in the process of working on throughout this year. So it's a pretty drastic change without turning it into a prison. It's not a prison, it's still the grade school, but we do things differently and we are more safety conscious in what we do. So I'll leave it at that. I talked enough.
Excellent, thank you.
Ms. Chris?
I think the major thing that we've done at the middle school is we have 2 double doors. We have 2 sets of double doors. One just beyond my office and one in what we call the new wing, which isn't anywhere near new any longer. And we installed a mullion bar, and now at 3:15 I go and shut those and they lock. They have push bars on the inside so students and staff can leave. You cannot get back in without keys. The key to the door to the courtyard is also locked at 3:15. Well, actually 3 when Liz leaves. so that anyone who comes in after hours, after 3:15, they have access to the office area, the gymnasium, and the stage. That's it. They cannot access the downstairs, the cafeteria, or the academic wing. That's a huge change, and I think that we will get pushback from parents when kids start forgetting things. But we've put it out in the letter, we've put it out in instant alerts. They know doors are locked and they're not getting in. It is what it is. That was one of the things the police kept coming back and saying, anybody can get in your building at any time, they can hide there overnight. So our building, academics and downstairs will be secured from 3:15 until 6 a.m. We are not unlocking the front doors. The outside double doors are unlocked at 6 when the custodian arrives. The inside double doors are not unlocked at all. Staff must let themselves in with a key. All staff, all students are coming and going through the front lobby doors only. No access through any other doors. They will be emergency egress only. No staff are parking in the circle. Those are only for guests and for fire and rescue should we need it. I've had a lot of positive comments from the police for that. We are all parking elsewhere. Gives us all extra steps. We're not leaving the office area alone. If and when the administrative secretary needs to leave, she tells me if I'm not in my office, she can't go. She's not running down to so-and-so's room to deliver a message or something else. If I'm not there, she goes and sees if Mr. Shea is there, and if he's there, she will knock on the window, let him know I've got to run an errand. Otherwise, she cannot leave the office area because that leaves us vulnerable in the front office. We put signs on all the exterior doors that these are not an entrance to the school. I had a meeting with all of the coaches with Mr. Stoneton and told them that if at any point I have doors ajar or the kids are sneaking out, they may not be invited back next year to be a coach again. That they must take this very seriously. All students need to come and go through the front 2 lobby doors only, and that includes athletics. All staff have been trained in how to use the intercom so that they all have access at all times to be able to make those calls if they should need to. And we're questioning people who come to the front doors much more regularly. We're checking them out, taking the time before we unlock the door, make sure we don't think they're agitated. I know that we need much more training in that. And the other thing is on our flip charts that give all of the vocabulary that we've used, Jeff rewrote the lockdown page so that it's now called enhanced lockdown. With the help of his team, they rewrote that. All of the flip charts in all of the classrooms in districts now have what we call enhanced lockdown directions. So that's what we've done at the middle school.
That's tremendous, thank you. Mr. Campbell?
So we had a forced change. When we opened up school, the first parent who walked in couldn't get into the building even after she buzzed in. The lock burned out on the release. So we've actually had to, for the first day, manually let people in. We've now and people haven't really noticed, we've kept the door unlocked. People are still buzzing in, which is a great thing. It's my understanding he will be here either tomorrow morning or Friday morning to put the new system in place.
I think back to that town council meeting when the presentation, what's the actual name of that study? The vulnerability study presentation was made to the town council and whoever else was there. And a lot of the discussion was, oh my word, how much is this going to cost? Where are we going to get the money? We almost immediately, I think, went to money and how it's going to be done. It's amazing how much you've already done, how seriously you've taken it. And, thank you so very much. Any other comments? We're good? Okay. I'll try not to skip anything. So this is just more. Anything more? Okay, I think it's safe for me to say, Mrs. Cook, take it away with your motions to table.
Yes, I'm going to move that we table policy IGDJB, interscholastic co-curricular and extracurricular activities, until October. We're still discussing ways that it needs to be changed, and it's too much to go through tonight.
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion passes 5-0 to table.
I'm also going to move, is it okay for me to continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm also going to move that we table policy KF, community use of school facilities and grounds, which was up for first reading because we're not done fixing that one either till October.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Motion to table passes 5-0.
Our next policy that was coming forward for first reading, IKE, promotion, retention, acceleration of students, is tabled until date certain, April 1st. Because what we're going to do is, there's going to be a committee working on that in conjunction with the homework policy. Those two things go hand in hand, and it's going to take a while to get those worked out.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Motion to table passes 5-0. Thank you, folks.
And that's what we did in an hour.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Mr. Petrosky, the school committee, please lead the school committee discussion on number of school committee members, compensation for school committee members, and term limits for the school committee chair.
I'm an advocate of looking at these three topics. I don't suggest that we're going to have a motion tonight to do anything. I think there's still a lot of data to be compiled, but I would tell you a little bit about my research that I got into, because I first of all started with calling the main school management group and saying, okay, what do you have regarding school board members? And we go to the conference for a bunch of school board members. And what Steve Bailey, who's now currently the chair of, or actually the executive director of the association, said was, it's quite ironic that this coming Saturday we're going to be talking about that. It doesn't take very long to look in some of the newspapers to see that Winthrop is not alone in having a dearth of candidates for the school committee and the town council. It's not alone in the fact that they're talking about what can we do to take and get more people interested in serving. What can we do about continuing to provide leadership opportunities for those serving on our committees. And I have made an overture and plan to talk with the leader of the town council and the town manager about these topics, because historically, you can go back in time and almost since the beginning of when a town was formed, there was a school committee, even if there was only one teacher and one building in which to put all the students. And in fact, in state legislative history regarding the school committee, they said that the school committee should not be paid. This is a volunteer activity. The towns, however, in issuing their town charters, were able to create things like, we as school committee members receive a stipend of $300 a year. The people who are serving on the town council here in Winthrop receive a stipend of $20 a meeting. There are some communities that are paying in the thousands of dollars per year, or they're at least providing for a compensation that would be equal to what we might call minimum wage, which is the topic du jour in some of these discussions, that how are we getting away without even paying a minimum wage? Others have paid mileage. Some have paid a stipend, as they call it, for supplies, which might include, for instance, in this committee, we all have computers. We take and we share communication by computers. if you're like me, I like to read it rather than look at it type of thing, so I print it out and use printing, toner, etc. The fact is that other communities have looked at the fact that some of their committee members have to take and employ a babysitter in order for that person to serve. Well, the cost of a babysitter is quite significant now. And more importantly, others have looked at it in terms of what does it mean to be a school committee member? I can say quite truthfully that 12 years ago, I knew we had some things going on, but for the most part, it was one meeting a month. It might be quite lengthy, but it was one meeting a month. What do we have today? And this is the question that other people are looking at. We have 5 people here, and we have a variety of committees. 2 of us serve on negotiations. 2 of us serve on policy. All of us do warrants. Some people try to tackle communication over here. Some people are involved with policy over there. And we've grown the process of saying not all of this can take place in a monthly meeting. And in fact, we, for the most part, have 2 meetings a month, with one meeting is primarily devoted to the educational policy and finances, and the second meeting is usually devoted to some issue that we need to resolve, for instance, the mission issue in the next meeting. But with committees and with regular meetings and everything, it's not the same as it used to be. And then I looked at it and said, well, that all's well and good. How about the Maine School Management Association? They're very good at sending us publications, information about how to run school, information about legislative activities, both at the state and the federal level. And in reality, we have to know those things in order to do our job. I quite frankly think that we are going to get into a situation which I don't see any other way but it can't be disruptive. And that is when the state decides to raise the minimum pay for teachers to $40,000. When we have in our school system 6, 7 steps that all fall below 40,000, it's not just new teachers that we're talking about. It's the entire faculty that we're talking about. And I just look at this and I go, in the great generosity of the state's going to pay for the first, but I'm not sure if they're going to pay for the whole thing. And they're going to pay about half for the second one. And the third year, we got to pick it all up locally. I can't see this town doing that. There's enough people out there right now who are very upset. Not necessarily at us personally, but they're just upset at a tax bill. And they're really worried about it. I'm worried about it because the state has continually failed to get to its 55%, which is not enough. And now they're adding this other big jump, which I'm not questioning that the teachers deserve it. They do deserve it. I'm just saying, how are we going to pay for it? And so the positions of us is going to take and need more meetings, more minutes, in order to take and cope with the situation. I see community outreach becoming increasingly more important, and it affects not only the superintendent, but it will affect the other school board members too, to get out there and try to sell these things. So my point number 1 is that we've got a problem here where the thing has evolved. And I'm very concerned about number 1, that we only have 5 members. My view is that the town council can have 7, we should definitely have 7. I think it's unfair to take and really sit down with a person interested in the school board and really explain to them what the disruption is going to be. And I really don't know. I mean, I've been lucky, except for all my medical issues and everything. I've had more time in the last decade or so than a lot of other people have had. But we've still got too much there, and I think we should spread it out a little bit further. And I also don't know what the ramifications will be when we talk to the town, because I also believe there are certain people in this town and on the council who are scared to death to open up the town charter, which may be where we have to make any changes. But it's a matter of talking to them and saying, okay, what do you want to do here? So that's my number one thing, is the number of school committee members should be more reflective of what this position is all about. My second one is about compensation, period. You know, I was thinking back, and I didn't make much money being on the board of pharmacy, but I almost got to minimum wage. In fact, I was getting to minimum wage because they based our meetings on 3 hours, even if we only met for half an hour, or if we met for 12 hours, which we did one day. But they at least paid us $35. And that sounded good. And then they paid us mileage, and they gave us $5 for lunch. That was, you know, unfortunately, there are too many state committees that is what the standard is. That's going to change because they're having the same types of problems. People are not rushing to be on these state committees because it's a sacrifice. Darling, in relationships within your family is a sacrifice in terms financially of how do you support anything which is going on. And I've always been a believer. I was an early supporter of raising the minimum wage. I'm still in favor of it. I believe in a living wage. I think you have to make this job more attractive. Now, what did I call attractive? I called attractive $1,000. And the only reason I did that is I was applying for $35, and I was multiplying it by what we normally would have is 22 monthly meetings, okay? And then I was adding the committee meetings, and I was saying $1,000 is bargain. and that was, I'm not being facetious about it, I'm just saying, what would I do? The reality is that it doesn't pay for everything. It's still low by some standards. But the $300 amount was set decades ago. It's not reflective of the time that we're in. And I'm sorry, community, I think you have to take in and compensate people for some of their service. I think volunteerism, we've already shown, people need other reasons to add to the fact that they want to do public service. And I mean that sincerely. And I'm on a lot of committees and stuff like that, and I'm on a lot of committees that don't pay anything. So, but the fact is that I keep losing my friends, I keep losing those members. And I'm really worried. You've got my nomination papers that my wife refuses to sign, but I said, I'm worried. If we make, realistically, taking a job, she's going to do her thing, but if I was to run, who's going to run with me? What are you going to do with 4 people to keep a quorum up?
Well, the scary part is it'll go to write-in, and who knows who will be in write-in.
That's true. But remember the old days is that we used to at least have a service group run a campaign meeting sometime, you know, we have a public discussion and a candidate night, I guess that's what we call it and everything. We don't even do that anymore.
So we wouldn't have any candidates.
Well, maybe that's true. But anyway, so I'm not saying what I just suggested is the right compensation. This is a startup discussion, it's not an end discussion. And the one thing we talking with Steve Bailey over the Main School Management, he said, you're not far off. He said, some of our communities, and he's going to help me look at this, are already approaching that number or beyond. And you can imagine some of the cities that are doing it, the bigger cities and stuff. But it's just the amount of work that goes into all of this. And we're expected to have some expertise, but we come in, it's basically pre-Ks. And that's the other reason. I'm not in favor that you have to serve all the time, but I can tell you, the first year, you get to know everybody's name and say, why am I here? The second year, you get a little more comfortable. And by the third year, you perhaps know something because you've taken the time to study what's going on. But it keeps changing on you. Experience is somewhat good as long as you do the work, and I think the one thing we have here, we get the work done. We've had some good groups of school committee members, and I'm pleased with that. And the final thing is that, no offense, school committee chair, I do not know what your plans are or anything else, but I also subscribe to the notion that, that you should have some kind of a passage of the chair, and maybe it's 2 terms, to me seem reasonable, but I just think there's a great learning opportunity, and there's a great opportunity for anybody on this committee at this time, and, you know, who could serve as chair. But it is a time-consuming process too. There's no question about it, and I admire our 2 chairs here for all the time they put into this. Thank them for doing that too. They're critical. So, those are some of my thoughts. I mean, there's more research to be done. And so I started. I said, I think we need to discuss this.
I really appreciate the discussion, because your motivation for the discussion was, how in the world are we going to fill these positions? Because you're quite right. As much calling as any and all of us have been doing and talking to people and cajoling them, there's no one that's even taken out papers except for you. So,
Yeah. Would anybody else?
And it is going on everywhere. First I heard about it really was the volunteer fire company was just beside themselves trying to figure out ways to get new members. But we have the same thing with town council as we do with school board. There's not a big turnover there, and there should be more competition for those positions. So I appreciate your motivation, and I appreciate your research. It's not something I really thought of. My thinking has been just to get the work done, pretty much. So I look forward to you bringing it future meetings, and please let me know when you want to be put on the agenda. Anything else that you and Steve glean? And I'd like to open it up for other school board members. I don't know that you're prepared to make any comments, but this is a great time to start a discussion.
Joe, also in your email, I think you talked about an extra stipend for chair and whatever. I know that can be discussed, but I totally agree. I work full-time, regardless of what way I work full-time, so I can't serve on one of those extra committees, which makes it now down to 3 or 4 people to do that work. Other people have other commitments as well, and that's going back full-time too. It is a lot of work. And nobody, I don't think, signs up for anything in education for the pay, period. But with that being said, it would be nice to have more members on here, and to really somehow get town council behind that. I don't think you're asking for a lot. Some of it is just to be somewhat equal, especially when you talk about members. And pay, again, you know, whether we do a per meeting or just a flat out stipend, you know, could certainly be increased as well. So I support a lot of this too, and if there's anything that I can do to help with that, let me know as well. But thank you for doing the work and bringing this out again. I know you've kind of talked about it before, but to formally put it out there. Thank you.
Yeah, Joe, thank you for bringing this up. You talk to so many people in the community, much more than I certainly do, and I know that you have put out a lot of feelers for people to take on these seats that are open this time, last time, every time we have an election. Ginny, you've been calling around, I've been putting feelers out, and there just really isn't anybody that is willing or wants to put in the time, or feels that they can put in the time that we put in. So I think we have created a bit of a situation because we are such a high-functioning, dedicated board, and we do put in a lot of work. that the expectation is high and that people aren't really wanting to take that on. But with that being said, if we were to be able to make it more attractive, increasing it from 5 to 7 does make me a little bit nervous because we can't even fill, the 5 seats. I'm really worried about this election, especially with the nomination papers needing to be in by Friday and not having anybody submitting those. So I'm not sure what's going to happen in the future and what this board will look like, but to increase it, to have the discussion and to start bringing light to the issue, I think is really important. So I'd like to continue to pursue that and appreciate you taking the time to do the research and coordinating this discussion.
I think there's always an upside and a downside to everything, and just one of the downsides when you increase the size of any committee, it's sometimes much more difficult to get consensus, but that can also, that's fresh thoughts coming in, so there's an upside and a downside to that.
Well, if I could just follow up with one example, and we're fortunate, and I'm going to give a kudos to Kristen here, but a few years ago, Kristen got involved with negotiations. And I know you had Mill Hadley very involved with you. You kind of waited for me to feel like I was up to doing some of this stuff. But, all boards sometimes uncover a rare gem. She likes to negotiate. She does incredible work. She can utilize that phone of hers, okay, in such a way that I'm just really impressed by the whole thing. The end result of this is that the community of Winthrop's benefiting, as our superintendent has mentioned. We do consult with lawyers, but we don't consult very often. What was it, .10 the other day was our charge? Lawyers cost $400 or $500 an hour. We're saving thousands of dollars having the negotiations set up the way they are between Kristen and the superintendent and yours truly flipping the papers, okay? The point is, we're trying to find ways, in our own way, to help this community not have to pay for this. And we've got other examples as well. We've always had this along the way. And our teachers have done things. I mean, it's not that they haven't contributed somewhere. But from a board perspective, we've always had that idea of saying, can we help to save some money? And we try. So, plus we use my old signs and turn them back. So that's it. But I'm just saying that that's another reason why I'm saying, I think there's some other people that should be here, but I also think that we are a committee that basically saves money for the community and helps the community out in that way.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
That's a question. On your term limits, is that a 3-year term you're talking for Jenny?
Well, actually, I think, it was 3 years, 6 years, or something like that. Maybe 6 years is appropriate. The fact is, everybody's elected to a 3-year term unless there's a vacancy in the interim type of thing. So that's where the 3 years came from.
I think he's interested in having a term limit for the chair so that it has to get past this has to get passed around. Is that accurate?
Right.
Okay, moving on. Thanks for the discussion. I made a big start here so I don't forget this one this time. School committee member open forum. Janet, I'm sorry, you do such a great job with this. I'm just going to start.
I don't even have a lot this time because I'm fine from opening school. Just good luck. I know all the sports teams are starting up. There's been some great articles already in the paper about some of our athletes. And I know it's a crazy busy time of the year, but I'm glad you guys all had a great opening.
You missed it, Janet.
I had the worst school opening I think I've ever had. So it was crazy.
You know what I forgot to mention too is we started off with 2 student performers.
That's
that
awesome.
had half the crowd with a tear coming down.
Wow. That's awesome. So just good luck in the school year, and
Oh, sit right there, yeah,
I hope it goes smoothly. So that's all I got.
thank you. Mr. Petrowski, anything?
Yeah, I would echo the same thing about the beginning of school, the enthusiasm. One of the things that I'm continually proud of, though, is our alumni. It's great to see some of the things that are being written by our alumni, and some of the achievements that they're making. It all plays well into our school system and into our community as well. And I did have the opportunity this summer to talk with quite a few of our alumni, including some that had served on the school team. So that's worked out well, and I hope we can get our students back.
Yes.
Thank you.
For sure. Ms. Cook?
I'm sorry I missed the opening of school. It
I'm
sounded
sorry you did too, because it was grand.
Yeah, I am. And it sounds like everything's off to a great start. I'm really happy to hear about all the safety things and the ALICE training. I think it's a great direction for school this year.
Michelle?
I've already checked off a couple things that people already said. About the student reps, do we have them, that in process to have our senior graduate replacement?
But I don't know if Mr. Campbell's
Ready for that yet?
ready for that yet.
Okay.
Or not. I don't know. Has that gotten on
So,
to your?
yes, the boss asked me to work on that, and I didn't realize, are we talking seniors? Because I talked
No.
to juniors.
Yeah, no, we
Okay.
had our senior representative graduate so that his seat's vacant. Ken is our senior,
So it would be a junior.
Okay.
so we do need a junior.
Yes, I just wanted to talk to Dr. Brown about this student before I brought him to a meeting.
Great.
We'll be at the next one if the boss approves.
Okay.
Because that brings my next topic. I know that in the past we've had a huge vaping issue, and I don't know if that's continuing on or if that's kind of stopped. So I feel like it's important once our student representatives get on board that we have that discussion, and so that they can help us brainstorm effective ways of conveying the dangers. I believe that we're starting to see some of the effects of that. I know that when I was growing up, smoking was something that, oh, when you're old, you have all of these issues because of it, but there wasn't really anything that that came about suddenly from doing it, and now we're seeing 18-year-olds developing what they're calling sudden and severe lung illness due to vaping, where they basically have lung failure because of it. And so I think that it is extremely important that we somehow effectively convey the dangers and have our students get on board with stopping and discouraging their friends from doing it. So I would like to, hopefully, once our students get on board, continue that discussion and hear some of the things that that we could be doing to work towards that. And last but not least, we really need a school committee member. If Joe is going to agree to run, thank you, Joe, for running again. We need somebody else. We need someone else to take their papers out and to get them signed and returned by Friday. I've had some help with making suggestions of names, but no one that is willing to take the step. So if you do have anybody that you think would do it, please encourage them to get to the town office, take out papers. If you need my help getting signatures, I will be more than happy to spend Thursday, tomorrow, and Friday doing that. So that's that.
Maybe I'll just piggyback on what Kristen said. If you know anybody that, and they need to talk to somebody, I'm happy to talk to people. Although I might not be the greatest person, because I've talked to 25 people at least, and nobody's taken out papers, so I'm not very successful at it. But I'm happy to give it a try. And thank you all. On the first day of school, I asked all of our building principals if they would please, and all of our program directors, if they would please make sure that they said to their staff how much we appreciate all that they've done, especially over the summer. And I hope that that's happened. And would you just, the next time you see them, tell them how much we do appreciate them, and we wish them a very successful school year. So, Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Petrosky.
Yes, excuse me, I missed what I was going to say. First of all, thank you, Colleen, for passing out the schedule of sports and everything. I don't know why, but I always seem to lose what I had, but there's some games I wanted to go to. But the most important thing is this Sunday, the sports boosters are having their annual fundraiser, the golf tournament at Springbrook. There's still some openings there. If it's just you, don't worry about the team. Call up Sarah McLaughlin, and she'll take and figure out how to take care of you. But it's a good fun time, but it's very important to our athletic programs that we raise the money that we do each year at the golf tournament. So, and I have dragged 3 Petroskis out to play with me.
I'll entertain the motion.